welcome to the Pewter Cast. I am Brent Allen, your host. This is our off-season tour. Joining me, as always, is Rendax, my co-host. We are here for another one of our Buck in the News type shows where we're just going to kind of check in on all the headlines and everything that's been happening over at One Buc. Rendax, how you doing tonight, my friend?
Never better. That's false. I'm good. Everything's good here. Clicking along. The combine's coming up soon, and then I think it's only like 25 days till free agency, and it's a little bit of a lull after the Super Bowl, but couple more weeks.
Yeah, it definitely. I feel like this offseason seems to be moving a little bit faster this year than it did last year, and I don't know if it's just we're more aware of it.
I think the Olympics are helping.
But I haven't watched a single Olympic. I know we got one gold medal from someone, probably more. I don't know. How have the Olympics been going, Ren?
Terrible.
One gold medal. That's it.
No, they've had more than one,
okay,
but a lot of the people that were sort of, that have made a lot of the commercials and sort of NBC has been, trying to pump up as gold medalists have fallen flat on their face, and it hasn't been pretty, it's lots of what it is so far. It's curling and figure skating.
I've seen a lot of curling jokes lately.
And that's all it is. And I honestly think the coverage has been pretty poor, to be honest. And I know it has a lot to do with the time, because if you're a night owl like myself, you can stay up till 2-3 in the morning and then watch the events live. Mm-hmm. But then they'll show them again during the day, and if it's a huge event, they'll show it again during prime time later that night. So almost like a full 18 hours later, you're seeing the same thing again. And with the way the social media is, who won as soon as it happened.
Sure.
So it's a little anticlimactic, and with the United States not doing well in pretty much anything, Shaun White was a big story, but Lindsey Vonn will be skiing soon, so that'll be big. But the men's downhill was like a blip on the radar, and I don't know, because it was there was no potential for a medal for the U.S. men's skiing. Mm-hmm. Or I watched it and I thought Jim Nantz and Bodie Miller were awful. I mean, they're like, oh yeah, here you go, can't make it.
Those are the announcers or something.
The announcers. They're like, yeah, you made a bobble there. This course is so tight, you can't make up any time later on. And they were calling people out, in the first 2 gates. And then, I watched this guy who I have no idea who he is, and I'm watching women's cross country skiing, and he's he's like Tony Romo, oh, there we go. It's no. And I'm into it. I'm ski, push in my head. I'm push. And then you get to the men's
slide down the hill.
These guys are going 85 miles an hour off the side of a cliff, and it's oh yeah, a little bobble there. I'm just oh, this is terrible. So that's my personal view. U.S. not really, at least the big stars haven't real sort of lived up to their expectations so far, but whatever.
It's an interesting thing. As we as football fans and sports fans in general, we're in this weird change in the way that we as a society intake sports. We don't all just sit down and watch the game on TV anymore. Some people watch it. I don't know, Twitter. Doesn't Twitter actually broadcast the Thursday night game or something like that in football?
Some of them, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of times you find it in clips and various things. I think it's just a way that we are consuming the game a little bit different, which is changing things. I'd never connected it to the Olympics and how people would consume and take in the Olympics, because I've heard a lot of how much viewership is down this year, and advertising revenue and all this other stuff that people keep bantering about whenever people don't watch something as much as they used to on TV. But I don't know. That's kind of interesting. It's an interesting thought to me that I just had as far as connecting that back to football. But hey, speaking of football, we're here to talk about the Bucs, Ren.
No more Olympic talk?
No. Well, it sounds like you actually said everything that needs to be said with the Olympics is what it sounds like, except for sweep, dude, sweep. Like it's about,
It would also irritate
I've seen videos
me,
of cats. Sorry, go ahead.
I know a little bit about curling, but these guys talk about like the hammer and the hog line, and I know what the button is, but there's terms that you should probably say like, oh, this is what this is, like 3 or 4 times during your hour-long broadcast of guys like pushing rocks down ice, but they don't. They just
teach us why this is a game.
Yeah, it's like, come on, man. I mean, I understand, like maybe up north, like people play curling or at least know the rules. Maybe it's on TV a little more, but I don't see curling except for every 4 years. And it's I get I understand how to score, but like the verbiage and vernacular they're using, you sort of need to explain what that means, and it's just a little frustrating. So anyway, yeah.
Hey, Ren, I know you have lived in St. Pete like your entire life. I have lived up north. I guess I just never lived that far north because I am with you. I know nothing about curling except for what I see once every 4 years.
And I think that's probably true. It's such a niche sport. And another thing that, as far as I'll finish my last little Olympic rant here, is there wasn't a lot of speed skating. Now the Dutch dominate every year, but usually there's like 1, 2, 3, possibly 4 Americans that have a really good shot at a medal. And, the speed skating team was just, as far as worldwide, was subpar this year. So we didn't get to see a lot of speed skating either. And that's one of my favorite Olympic sports. It was just, it's just kind of – NBC has turned it into ice skating, prime time ice skating. Like, that's what the Olympics are about. And, that just doesn't blow my skirt up. So – that's it. I'm done. Football, yay!
Football. Well, with that, this is our Buck in the News show, and this is a show where we it's not the Buck in the News. This is our off-season show, but we're modeling after our Buck in the News show that we kind of instituted. What about mid-season, I guess, Ren? Maybe a little bit before the mid-season point. And it just provides a good framework, I think, to be able to talk about everything that's happened. Now, we are releasing episodes at a clip of about once every week and a half, 2 weeks. And it's been 2 weeks since we've really got to sit down and talk about what's been going on with our Buccaneers. So there's been a few headlines that have certainly come out that we'll get to cover. And one of the things I like about having this time is it actually allows the story to develop.
Right.
Everybody else is kind of they're as soon as a new piece of news is out, they're out talking about it, and we get to let it develop and sit back and look at it and analyze it that way. But before we get there, we always kick this part off with talking about transactions, and it does look like the Bucs have signed one person to the team, one transaction. This is a linebacker, Jeff Knox. Ren, I got to ask you, who the heck is this guy? I know nothing about him.
Jeff Knox Jr. I don't know. Okay, sorry about that. He was in camp last year. He's a linebacker. He's solid, and that's pretty much what it was. It's like every once in a while, I'd be like, "Hey, who's that guy?" He played for up the Canadian League for the Saskatchewan Rough Riders. Then he came down, didn't make the team, went back up to Saskatchewan, and then just a few days ago, the Bucs re-signed him. 6'2", 225, went to a small school. This is interesting, or maybe it's not. We'll see. He went to California, but not like California in California. He went to California in Pennsylvania, and they're the Vulcans.
Pennsylvania has a California?
California, Pennsylvania. Huh. That's the name of the town. It's Division II football, and they're the California Vulcans.
Like Star Trek, live long and prosper.
I don't know. It might be Vulcans is like a twist on Volcano.
Right.
Because the mascot is Blaze the Vulcan, and their fight song is Chariots of Fire.
Okay. I think Vulcan is a volcanic island right off the coast of Italy. I think it's where they got the name for that. So that would make sense. But that's interesting. I got to tell you, the Saskatchewan Rough Riders, it's my favorite Canadian Football League team. You want to know why? Because it's fun to say Saskatchewan when you can say it. When you can say it.
When you can say it.
So Jeff Knox, he's back with the team. We had him in camp last year. He's not assigned to the practice squad or a futures contract. He's actually full on just signed to the team. So, is this a free agent signing? Is that technically what this is?
No. Well, yes and no. Like if free agency doesn't start until like I said, 25, 26
March
days,
5th,
something like that.
Something like that.
But if a player's not on a team, you can sign him. Like technically, like Brett Grimes is still on the Buccaneers. You know?
Yeah, because his contract goes until that March 5th at 3:59 or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, like if we're recording and the Chiefs just signed a cornerback that was with the Raiders, and that broke. I'm like, what? I'm like, how's that even possible? Is it like one of these things like the Alex Smith trade where it's the trade's been, or like the signing's been in principle, everything's there, but we can't actually sign it or make official till a later date. But I read up on it, and like that was one of the first things John Gruden did when he got to the Raiders was cut this guy. Big contract, and he was injured a lot last year. So the Chiefs pick him up. If you don't have a team, you can sign, and of course you can sign your own players right now. Like as soon as the season ended, or
you can always
do
sign
it anytime.
Right,
you can always sign your own players. So since he didn't have an NFL team, it's not considered, technically a free. Well, I guess it is a free agent pickup, but the people that we all know that are free agents, like we're saying, oh, we can't wait till this guy. They're not technically free agents yet. And that's why, you sort of can't size players till the magical date.
Good to know. I think so because I'm like this. I actually read the CBA last year, and so it turns out, and I don't know if you knew this or not, but just because we're talking about teams can sign their own players at any time, the team actually can't talk to the player themselves. Like they can only talk to the player's agent. Like they're not allowed to actually discuss it with the player at this point, which I find real interesting, and I found that weird.
I don't. I think that's a good idea.
It probably is. It's probably a good reason why it's in the CBA. But it makes me wonder what they're like, because at some point somebody's got to come together to actually put pen to paper to sign a contract. Like, what are they allowed to say or not say to the player while they're there signing their contract? And like, are the players allowed in the building? Like, does Jameis still get to go in and work out and use the facility?
Oh, yeah.
And, are they allowed, like, can they say hi? Can they not say, like, I just don't know. What
are you talking about? Huh? Like you're saying the coaches can't say hi to Jameis?
No, that's what I'm wondering. Like, because there's a you're not supposed to talk to the players or
about their contract,
about the contract, but also about football and
you mean
what
in the off season?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What I don't know is how far that limit goes as far as no contact between player and the organization. Or the coaches or something like that. So
I would have to bet that's probably one of the more broken rules. I mean, they're in the building because you see it all the time. Like, Donovan Smith was in the building. We're going to talk about that. But, like, I've seen Caleb Benenoch in the building. Jude's, like, been working out almost, like, every day. He's in the building. I've seen Caleb Benenoch in the building. Like, little video clips. I've seen Demir Dotson in the building. So they're still there, like, getting treatment or rehab or working out or whatever.
Picking up their Peter Cast Award trophy.
Yes, exactly. Checking with the front desk every day.
Did it come?
Did Levante David, did my 3 Pewdies come today?
4.
No?
Yeah, you got 4, actually.
4. New leader in the clubhouse. So, yeah, I would think... I don't know how far you would push that.
Yeah, I'm just curious, but
you feel like a team like the Patriots probably, and this is being a little unfair, but you feel like they would not follow that rule whatsoever.
No.
Like they know where no cameras are in the building,
right?
And only
they don't care.
Like, yeah, and only coaches and players have key cards to get in a certain area of the building, and they talk to them.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, is it like, hey, how you doing? Of course, that's allowed, but. Hey, are you going to work on your deep ball timing with, at the cutter talking to Jameis? Are you going to work on your deep ball timing with Mike and Deshaun this offseason. Oh, yeah, where are you guys going? Okay, well, I want you to work on this route, like these route concepts. Is that too far? Sounds like it.
Mm-hmm.
But how are you really gonna police that? I mean, as long as you don't like send it in a text,
right,
or an email. It's like you guys are both of this. You're in the building, so
right.
I don't know how you enforce that. It's like jaywalking.
Right. I'm just curious to know. But I do know, as far as that they're not allowed to talk to the players about it. They can only talk to the players' agents. But they can, as we said, they can talk to their players' agent at any time. Now, speaking of that and players and agents, Ren, why don't we go ahead and get to kind of the first headline that we want to talk about? And this came out, I guess, about 10 days ago. PewterReport.com, our friend Trevor, who's been on the show a few times, winner of Bucs Media Personality of the Year Award for the 2018 PewterCast Awards, broke a story from a conversation that he had with Mike Evans's agent, basically saying that they are not currently negotiating a new contract for Mike. The Bucs, of course, picked up his fifth-year option last year, so the plan is Mike's just going to go and play his fifth-year option, and they'll negotiate when the time comes to negotiate. And their agent says that he feels like Mike's a top 5 player in the league, not just a top 5 wide receiver, but a top 5 player in the league, and he's aiming for top 5 player money. So Ren, what do you make of all this whole Mike Evans not getting a new contract or signing a new contract or even talking about a new contract until after this year is over? It sort of seems to be the implication that people are running with.
Yeah, you finished it up really nicely there. I think the article was a whole much ado about nothing. I'm appreciative of finding out, like, hey, are they in serious talks? Are the Buccaneers in serious talks with Mike Evans' agent about getting into an extension? The answer is no. Everything else is just like agent speak. It's like, what else is he supposed to say?
Yep.
He's like, well, as it stands right now, yeah, we're going to play out our 5-year deal. And Buccaneers Twitter went crazy. They're like, oh, he's going to leave us. Like, they totally missed the part where it's like, it's no serious offer. When they want to talk to us, we're here.
Yep.
I have a good relationship with Jason Light. I have a good relationship with Mike Greenberg. But basically, it's almost like no news is good news. But people just missed the part where he even said, like, hey, when they come to the table, we'll be ready. He didn't say we're going to play out these 5 years and see where it goes from there.
Right.
He never said that. He said, we're not in serious talks, but whenever my door's open is basically what he said. So if that's it, then your only logical next step is, well, yeah, we're just going to play the 5 years out because as of right now, what else?
Jason hasn't picked up the phone yet, right? Okay, so to be fair, here are the quotes that Trevor had in the article. Now, these are the quotes of the agent, Gilmore. Here's what he says. He says, we're not doing any negotiating right now. We're just going to wait and play it out. Now, does that mean that they're going to play it out, meaning they're going to play the 5th year out, or just play out the negotiating process? Which is, because I agree with you, Ren, by the way. I think this is a much ado about nothing. The news here is just they haven't talked about negotiations yet.
Yeah.
And the implied threat, and again, as an agent speak, I think that's all this is. And I think this is the agent dangling, the agent probably contacted Trevor or Peter, Scott or whomever, and he's trying to get, it feels to me like the agent is trying to get the Bucs to do something, to make a move here. Because for whatever reason they haven't yet.
Yeah, it's like he pushed his pawn out. It's like, hey, I think Mike needs to be paid as a 5-year, like 5 top player in the league, and he pushes his pawn out, and now we begin. Like,
exactly, and that's kind of what this is, the first step in the negotiating process of just saying, hey, we're not negotiating yet, but here's what we're kind of looking at, and there is an implied threat, and it's unspoken. That's why it's implied, but the threat is he is potentially open to going to another team. If he makes it all the way to free agency at the end of basically in a year and 20 some odd days from now, is about what it would be. So that's the threat. Of course, I don't anticipate them going that far with it. You will see what the wide receiver money really is. But that's what he said. We're not doing any negotiating right now. We're just going to wait and play it out. But then he says, we think the Bucs are a great organization, and we think they really care about Mike, and they really care about the direction that the franchise and where it's going. So, that's we're going to wait and play it out, but we'd like to stay in Tampa is the way I kind of read that. He also says,
and this is how much money we expect you to offer us.
Right. And that's what he says. He says, Evans, his stats and his record speak for itself. And when the time comes, the deal will be in line with what they plan. And as you said, his other quote is, if the Bucs come to us with something, we'll evaluate it. But at this point, we've not heard from them.
Yeah, it's just funny how all that just got lost.
Right. We're just letting it play out. So what this does not say, what I don't read into this, that it seems like a lot of people are reading into it, is Mike will not talk about the contract. He will play through his 5th year and then talk about it on the backside. I don't read that into this at all, which seems to be what a lot of people are reading. Yeah, because it's not there.
It was a big overreaction. I agree. But let's get to the sort of and I understand this is agent speak, but I want to see where you stand on this.
Okay.
I think I can throw this out the window right away. Mike Evans is a top 5 football player in the entire NFL. Is it okay if I say that that's not true? I mean, are you going to put an argument up with that?
No.
Okay.
Is top Mike 5 wide receiver?
That's my next question. Now, where do you put him top 5 wide receiver? I mean, look, I love Mike, not banging on Mike, hope he's here forever, plays until he's 43, breaks all the records, goes in the Hall of Fame, first ballot Hall of Famer, gold jacket, comes to my birthday party. I hope all those things.
You want him to become a top 5 player?
I don't think he's a top 5 wide receiver.
Yeah.
I mean, he's really just a possession receiver right now. Mm-hmm. He doesn't get consistent separation, and he gets zero yak. He's not Odell Beckham. He's not Julio Jones. He's not Antonio Brown. Then you can start talking about Mike. I don't think he's Hopkins.
Let me poke another hole in the Mike as a top 5 receiver. One of the things that would bolster that is the idea that in his first 4 seasons, he's hit 1,000 yards every season. And only 2 other players have ever done that, Randy Moss and somebody else.
Okay.
I don't remember who. But he's the 3rd person in NFL history to do that, right? We spent an entire season, Ren, talking about why the Bucs were throwing so much. We talk about Jameis having so many yards that he's throwing. Well, when you're playing from behind and you lose your running game, that's all you can do.
Right.
It's not necessarily that he's getting so many yards because that's the plan and that's how we're going to attack it. And he's, catching all these deep balls. And then, as you say, catching the ball and then turning around and getting extra yardage on top of that's not what's happening.
Or catching the ball while running.
And again, gaining extra yards. Now, all of this to say, and I think I speak for you, I think you just said this as well. This is not to say that Mike's not a great player.
No.
This is not to say that we don't love Mike. This is not to say that Mike is not certainly has the potential to be a top 5 player or a top 5 wide receiver anyway. But is that what he actually is right now? No. It's a good question, Ren, because I hadn't really considered it before you asked the question. Okay. My question would be, who are the top 5 wide receivers in the league right now?
That's what I was saying just a little bit earlier. I think he squeaks in there at 5, at least for me personally.
Okay.
Beckham, and we're not taking injuries or, just overall game. Okay. Size, speed, power, yak, ability to get open, all that kind of stuff. Not this guy only, has only played 80% of his games, and Mike Evans has played 90%. That makes him better. That's not what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. So you got Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham Jr., who makes it mostly on yak for me, and Julio Jones. Okay. Now after that, you got D-Hop, Hopkins from the Texans. After that, you seriously got to that. I think that's where Mike slides in at 5 for me. But now I really haven't sort of done all the looking because there has been, receivers. I don't want to say they're a dime a dozen, but there's so many good ones.
Right. Well, you got Larry Fitzgerald, who informed the league that his team he'll be coming back this year. He's
you got Larry Fitzgerald. Jordy Nelson's been injured like the past 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
or Aaron Rodgers has been injured. And then, it's sort of like they go up and down as far as their seasons, except for those like the top 4 guys we talked about. Like, doesn't matter who's throwing to them. Doesn't matter, like,
Right.
if they have if they're only the one receiver on the team, which is something I think Mike is very good at too. It's like Mike will catch the ball and get open,
Mm-hmm.
even if he's the only wide receiver that the team's even scared of. He's still going to get his looks and he'll still get his catches. But even that Thaheen guy from Adam Thaheen from Minnesota. Like every time I looked at that guy, he was like wide open and getting yak and
he had a great year.
Yeah,
certainly had a great year. Yeah,
yeah. So judging's really hard. It's more going to be built on like being consistently good for a few years, because there's also been many flashes in the pan where this guy's like, oh, he's the bee's knees and now he can't get open. Like Jarvis Landry, had a great year a couple years ago, and then he sort of like fell face the earth today with Miami. Jay Cutler only threw to him for like 4 yards at a time, and then after Cutler got hurt, he really doesn't really pan out. So it's a lot about the situation around you. So I would say as a Bucs fan, you could squeeze Mike Evans in there in the top 5, but I'm sure there's guys out there that like I'm forgetting.
Yeah.
And then maybe just had like a bad year. Like 2 years ago, who's that? Amari Cooper from the Raiders. 2 years ago, you would have been, oh man, that guy, yeah, he could be a top 5. Last year, nothing. You're like, no, he's not a top 5. And that's kind of what happened to Mike this year. Last year, it's like, oh my God, he's a top 3. I'd put him up against OBJ.
Yeah. But I mean, Ren, the question then comes back to if you had your choice between OBJ and Mike right now going into the 2018 season, would you trade Mike for OBJ?
No.
Would you trade him for Julio Jones?
Yes.
Would you trade him for DeAndre Hopkins?
Yes.
Would you trade him for
Antonio Brown? Yes.
Antonio Brown?
Yes. And the only reason
now that's debatable.
The only reason I wouldn't trade him for well, that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, right.
The only reason I wouldn't trade him for OBJ is because he gets hurt more than I like, and he's just a doofus, man. He's just I'm not in it like obviously a Giants fan is. So on the outside looking in, he kind of looks like a bad guy. Not that I'm not calling him a criminal. He's just like kind of not like the best locker room guy, sort of a diva type of thing. Does really stupid stuff, kind of a distraction for the team. A little bit of a baby. So I think Mike's more mature than him.
You mean maybe what somebody who's not a Bucs fan might think of Jameis when they look at him?
Yes.
Who doesn't follow Jameis or
exactly
one of our other guys? Like
exactly.
Yeah.
So I could be totally off on that, but I think
you speak bad of Jameis, buddy, to us, and we'll pop you one in the face.
No,
Jameis is
I'll
our
talk
guy.
to you about it.
All right,
He's not a god.
I'll punch you. I will fight you like Mark Cook fights Judah J. Barima.
He's moved on to somebody, didn't he? He moved on to Mark Duffner or somebody.
I don't know, somebody.
He's fighting somebody else, Jack Del Rio or something. So I wouldn't trade, and I just think that even though OBJ's yak is out of this world, I just think did a distraction and all the other foolishness and malarkey that comes along with him. I'd just rather have Mike. I think that outgains it, and it's not like Mike can't start becoming more of a yak receiver.
Yeah.
It's just that he talked about it at the beginning of this year, like I'm going to try really hard, and it looked like he didn't really try really hard.
Yeah. Now, truth be told, as I'm sitting here thinking about this a little bit more, and it might be just because I tend to be loyal to our guys. I might actually prefer Mike over all those other guys. And I can't necessarily explain it right now. I'm thinking about it in my head, and I don't know. Yeah, stick with Mike. He's fine. We're good. So, but does that mean that I think Mike belongs in the discussion of definitely top 10.
Oh, top 10 for sure.
Absolutely top 10. So, but
I'll slate him in at 5. And stand there and die on that hill.
Right.
right now. We'll see again after next year.
Right, but let's bring this back to the contract negotiation that we're talking about, which, the agent's doing his job. Okay, he's floating these things out there. He's gonna sell his guy, right? But does being a top 5 player necessarily mean that that's the person who's going to get the best contract? Does that, do you have to be a top person in order to get the top money? And I would say no. Like, and if you, because he brought up the Jimmy Garoppolo thing. Is Jimmy Garoppolo a top 5 quarterback in this league? No, but he's the highest paid quarterback in the league right now after the contract that he just signed, until the next quarterback signs his contract.
Right, but Mike Evans isn't a quarterback.
No, I understand that. And I'm not saying that Mike Evans is going to get Jimmy Garoppolo money, nor do I think he should. But what I'm saying is, let's say Mike Evans goes and signs his contract. He could sign the largest, highest paid wide receiver contract in the league right now. And he'd be the highest paid contract until OBJ signs his contract. And then OBJ is going to be the highest one until, whoever else is on the list. And, obviously it's Mike and OBJ are the two who are kind of going back and forth because they came in the same year, right? So they're both gonna, they're both looking and trying to sign, and they're waiting for the other one to sign. The best thing for Mike is to have OBJ go ahead and sign his contract so that Mike has something to compare to, and vice versa, right? That's, just because Mike may not be a top 5 player is what I'm saying, does not mean that he won't necessarily command the largest contract for a wide receiver in the league. Like he's still going to get paid. Now if he's aiming for, because the number we hear, Jimmy Garoppolo is getting paid at something like $27 million a year. Or something like that. And like the total value of his contract's like 130 or something like that. Jameis, probably when they sign him, I think the projections I've seen is he's looking at probably going to be about 140, maybe 150. He's probably looking about a $30 million a year deal. Currently, the highest I was looking this up, the highest wide receiver or paid wide receiver in the league is somebody who's making like $17 million a year. It's Antonio Brown. He's currently the highest paid guy, making $17 million a year. DeAndre Hopkins has an $81 million contract, who's averaging $16.2 million. So if you look at, and then Julio Jones, highest paid wide receiver in the NFC South, who's the 5th highest paid receiver at 14.25. So, you could see Mike making upwards of $17.5, $18 million a year, maybe an extended contract that's going to be worth, somewhere between 90 to 100 million, maybe.
How long do you sign him for?
I don't know. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins.
Do you do like a Vincent Jackson?
5 years?
You sign him for Vincent Jackson was like 8.
Oh, was he? Oh.
Yeah. It was like 7 or 8.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Hopkins is signed for 6. So, 5 to me in my head is usually about the length of term of a contract, but I don't know. Gerald McCoy's contract, which was 90-something million, I think that was like an 8-year contract or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it really depends. I honestly I don't know. Remember, I could look it up real quick. But it's all about the. It was a longer one, but it's all sort of about the position. Like, you're not going to sign a running back to that length because he's going to break down and not be worth it. Cornerbacks can fall off an edge. Safeties can fall off an edge. I'd give Donovan Smith like an 8-year contract, and everyone would be up in arms.
I agree with you, but
he's only 23. Yeah. And everyone's going to be up in arms, and then you can backload his, and then you have the money to front load Quan and Mike and Jameis and Allie and those guys, because Donovan Smith doesn't get hurt. He's only missed a handful of plays, never missed a start. And we've always said it, like left tackles don't grow on trees. How many great left tackles are there in the league? Like 5?
Right.
And
not just in the league, Ren, but play it forward. How often is there going to be a left tackle that comes out that you're going to have a high enough pick that you're going to spend that high enough pick on a left tackle to replace Donovan Smith, who at this point has 3 years experience, and next year will have 4 and 5, and keep it going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you give him 8 years, and then so he plays till like he's 31, 32 years old, and everyone's up in arms about it. And then like 3 years, he'll look like a bargain, and he's got like 5 years left on his contract.
Right, and he'll be a damn good left tackle.
Yeah,
I anticipate
could be one of the best.
He could be a bust, Ren.
One of the best. I said
you and I were dead wrong about Doug Martin this past year.
Oh yeah, we were.
Okay, and let's just throw it out there. We could be dead wrong about Donovan Smith by the time this is done. But I think you and I are both on the train of no. Listen, he's doing fine. He really is, and I think he's only getting better. And people want to brag on him. That's fine. That's their business. But here at the Pewtercast, from what we see when we watch tape and when we look at the game, Donovan, he's doing okay. He's not the worst left tackle in the league for sure.
No, and like I said, it doesn't grow on trees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, 8 years. You're right on Gerald McCoy's contract. Yeah, and you can't have the best player at every position. You can't afford them all. Like you can't.
That's the point of the salary cap.
Yeah. It's like that. So, I would lock him up now for a super long-term deal because he's super durable, and he's still getting better, and he's young, and he's strong, and he's athletic.
You're talking about Donovan Smith, by the way.
Yeah, we're still talking about Donovan Smith.
Right.
And, it's like it's sort of like a perfect situation, to be honest. It's like right now, when he's bad, he's pretty bad. Like, he's like 28th, 27th in the league of left tackle. When he's good, he's around like 11, 12. And it's only his third year. And as he gets better, that ceiling's going to go up and the floor's going to go up with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So all he has to do is be more consistent. And then you've got a guy that could potentially be a top 10 left tackle very soon that you're going to be paying peanuts for by the time he's like 30, 31, or 28 or even 27. Like 3 years from now, 4 years from now, you're going to be like, he'll be making a bunch of money. He'll be fine. But as far as the price of left tackles go, he'll be a bargain. Sure. And it just sounds sort of silly talking like that, but it's just the truth.
Right. But as far as all this means for Mike Evans, listen, this whole thing, we're probably going to look and see him in between the $17 and $20 million a year range. That's what I would expect. I wouldn't see anything greater than that. And that's why I bring up Jameis and some of these other guys. Mike's not going to be making $30 million a year. The top 5 player in the league. No, he's not. Could he be paid as the top wide receiver in the league, even if he's not in the top 5? Though certainly that's part of the discussion. Sure. Yeah. Sure. But, that's all this is. This agent is just doing his job. He's trying to sell his player. Obviously he cares about the amount of money that Mike makes because that, reflects the amount of money that he personally makes. But, you have Mike's contract. For whatever it's worth, Scott Smith of Buccaneers.com was on the Locked On Bucs podcast this past week, and he says that he expects the Mike Evans deal to get done before the season starts.
I was saying that last year.
And I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought, the sooner you sign him, sort of like when I talk about Donovan Smith, it's going to seem like, oh, my God, that's huge money. But in 2 years, it's going to be, there's like 6 guys being paid, paid more than he is.
Yeah.
So
and you also had the point of the way that Greenberg, and Light set up these contracts where they front load them to go ahead and front load it now while we have the extra room. And then, when Jameis and company, because we're going to have to sign 4 guys all in the same year, right?
Jameis can go an extra year.
Jameis might go an extra year, but
if you want to sign, Mike's going to fall into, if you wait on Mike, the more you wait on Mike, it's going to fall into the same. If you don't sign him this year, you can put Jameis off for 1 more year, but then you got to sign Mike, Quan, Allie, and Donovan all the same year.
And then you've got, if you're going to do anything with Vernon, you've got that, but you also have Noah Spence, who will be coming up soon. You've got, shortly behind them, O.J. Howard's going to be knocking on the door too. His
agent. We haven't even mentioned Cameron Braid.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So.
Exactly. So yeah, all of that's, all of this to say this news that is no news really is just no news that we just spent 20 minutes talking about. So
nothing to talk about at all.
No, nothing at all. All right. Well, with that, we talked a little bit about Donovan Smith. Ren, why don't we jump over and talk about him just for a minute? He has been doing this sort of, speaking of no news, he's been doing this internship thing that if you follow Buccaneers.com, he's been going around the building, I think, and like doing different things. I haven't really been following it. I've just sort of seen it, and I've meant to go back and watch them and catch up and see. But Ren, talk to us about what's going on with Donovan Smith.
Well, you nailed it again. Talk about no news. But it's just fun. If you were fans of the Donovan Smith Alley radio show that they used to do with Casey Phillips a couple years ago, you sort of know Donovan Smith, and he has kind of a pretty infectious personality, but he's just a nice guy. He's cool, but he's not too cool for school type of cool. Mm-hmm. And just sort of like down for everything. He seems like he's a solid friend. He's just somebody that everybody sort of likes. Mm-hmm. So he went into One Buc place and was just doing different jobs. The camera followed him around. Like one day he got on the phone and called some people and sold some tickets. He actually said he sold some tickets, so sold some season tickets. Cool. I bet that was a lot easier to do than like, hi, this is Ren from Buccaneers Ticket Officing. Click. Hey, this is Donovan Smith, your starting left tackle of Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here to talk to you about season tickets. Oh, hey, Donovan. I bet the getting your foot in the door, I bet was a lot easier for him.
Right. Hey, I'll send you a free signed jersey if you buy them right now.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like you could. There's all kinds of things that he could have done. But he said he sold some, and then later that day he went to like a promotions event and was kind of like head of a raffle, and he was supposed to be sort of the organizer. He actually did a 1 minute Bucs beat where Casey, sort of tells you what goes on during the day. He did his actually, I think it was Valentine's Day, and then he did something with the graphics crew that hasn't come out yet. It looked like it was something I hadn't heard of. It looked like there's this new age type of graphics or way that they're going to do graphics, or the next gen way. Are these
like graphics that are like on the website, or like graphics that go up on the screens in the stadium, or any idea what those are? Yeah,
I do not know. Do not know, but we will see. That's coming out. So he's a fun guy to listen to. He's funny without trying to be funny. He's just, like I said, he's an all around dude. The Renaissance man of dudes. He's sort of good at everything. Plus he's a bowler and he's a pretty good bowler.
So I think what our listeners really want to know right now, Ren, is he violating the CBA by doing this?
That's a question for you. You read it.
Yeah, no, he's not. No, he's not. I don't know. It's cool. It's funny. It's cool. It's hey, go over there and look at it. And it doesn't really affect much at all, but no. It's kind of we're bringing it up because it's fun, and so I will go check it out soon. Bucs fans, you guys go out, check it out with me. Let's talk about it, see what you think. Hit them up. But why don't we get back to some actual news that is affecting some fans, Ren? Apparently, several fans got emails. I was not one of them, though, saying that their ticket prices are going up. In fact, from what I understand, the emails were renew your season tickets by such and such a date, or else get the last year's prices, or here's the thing. Which actually, I might have received that email, but I think I just renewed the tickets like last year, because I'm going back to Ray J this year again.
Oh, renewed it like right at the end of the season?
Well, no, it was like during the season. They're like, hey,
right.
if you want to
tell me that.
Yeah,
they started calling you like game 8.
No, it was like game 2. They're like, hey, if you want to, but it was the
like
if
right
you go ahead and do it
win.
now, right? Well, because the way it works, like you have to have all of your season tickets paid off before the first game.
Like, or what? They keep the money and take away your tickets?
I would hope they refund your money. I don't know. I didn't get to that point because I I just bought the tickets, right? And they said, if you want to go ahead and get your tickets for next year, you can do like a payment plan, or you can do, you can just pay the money, or however you want to break it up. That's fine. But, if you do it now, you'll get your seats for next year for the same price you got it for this year. So maybe they told me back then that the prices were going up. I don't know. I think I just assumed that every year the prices are going up, but, I'm glad to go ahead and get tickets, for the same deal I got for last year,
Right.
So it's possible I got that email, but they said, get them in by March, whatever, and or else they're going up. Of course, this has caused a big kerfuffle, as some might expect, especially coming off of a not really great season, and they have raised their ticket prices for the last couple of years after not raising them for a whole bunch of years. So the other thing, it seems to me, from what I've heard, again, I don't know because I really didn't get one of these emails, is that it's only affecting some seats in some sections, and then it's also maybe affecting some individual games that they're calling like premium games or something of that nature. So, for me as a season ticket holder, it doesn't personally bother me, the idea that they're raising ticket prices. I think just because I expect them to, mine don't seem to be raising. So, I don't know.
I was a little surprised about sort of the uproar, and I don't know if it was more the media guys trying to make something out of it. And by media guys, I mean the ones that have pods, making something out of it.
Which is almost all of them now, Ren.
Which is almost all of them, yes. But the Bucs can do whatever they want with their ticket prices. Like, you don't have to buy them.
Right.
It's, it's like, hey, we're raising prices. How dare you? You put I can understand, like you sort of opened with, the bitter feelings because the season was so disappointing, but that doesn't change anything.
Right.
And I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but if, you had till I think like March 15th, and you could get your season tickets at the same price.
Right.
If you wait a little longer, like as you say, I'm going to wait to see if Jameis is suspended for 4 games, and then I look, the schedule comes out, and okay, so I get to see Jameis play 6 games instead of 8. Maybe I don't want to. If you wait till then and then buy, then you get it at you're going to have to take it in the wallet and pay the higher price. But like you said, it's only for some sections. The thing that bothered me about the whole thing, and it wasn't about raising the prices, it was about how the individual game tickets, like you talked about, the premium games, which are the Steelers and Eagles, the Buccaneers are selling those individual games at a higher rate, but they have taken away people's season tickets who sell them for profit, so say you buy season tickets and you end up going to 3 games and sell 5 of them, the Bucs might, send you an email saying, thank you, but no thank you. So that's
okay. Let's roll this back.
Like that.
Let's roll this back to them taking away people's season tickets and talk about that for just a second. Because if somebody comes in and buys season, and here I'll tell you, when I sat down and I talked with my sales rep, one of the things he said was, look, if you can't go to a game, you can resell these tickets and you can sell them for more than what you paid for them. Like, that was a selling point of his.
On our site that we tell you to.
Yeah. Right. Through the NFL. I mean, I said this past year I went into.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, this past year I went into every single game and I put every single ticket that I had for every game up for sale. But you know how much I put them up for? Stupid prices. This was the, you'll have to pay me this much money to make me sit home instead of go watch my Buccaneers. And it was like $1,200 for a seat or something like that. Like, I mean, it was dumb prices.
Did you get any nasty comments?
No, not at all. Not at all. But, but here's the thing, the story that they say is, well, what we've done is we have identified people who get season tickets and resell them, not just at a higher price, but they also resell them to fans of the other teams. So? When I put the tickets up for sale, I have no clue who's buying these tickets.
Exactly.
It's just a matter of, do you pay the price that I asked for them to be paid? Listen, we live in a capitalistic society. This is how capitalism works. You buy something and then you turn around and sell it for more. I don't understand why they're having an issue with it. I understand the idea of you don't want to have somebody who buys tickets and then turns around and sells them to fans of the other team to fill it up. But at the same time, you can't control you don't know who's buying the tickets. It's just,
quite frankly, it's none of your business. It's just a smokescreen.
It is.
It's a smokescreen to sort of subconsciously trick fans into like, these are bad fans. They're selling them to Giants fans, so they invade your stadium. That's sort of the angle they're working at.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day when my family had season tickets, and I'm talking season 1, season 2, season 3 of existence of the Buccaneers, they came in the mail like a big sheet, and you'd turn it in, and they'd tear the ticket and give you like the other half.
Right.
Like, so there was no way to track if I bought that ticket, like who I was coming in. There was no like little barcode scanners. There was no internet, obviously, so you couldn't like say, oh, well, Brett Allen, you sold your tickets. Let's see who you sold. Like none of that. Mm-hmm. So now that we live this information, I don't even like them tracking. Like, how do they even find out that if I had season tickets? First off, if I sold them, it's none of your freaking business. And who I sold them to, double none of your freaking business. Right. So that kind of sits, and then you pile on to like, hey, we're going to charge more for Eagles and and Steelers games because guess who's going to buy them? Eagles and Pittsburgh fans. Because they're going to – because like there's a lot of Northerners down here. Right. They travel well, and they're going to come see their team. So they're doing the exact same thing they're punishing Bucs fans for doing. But since it's their product, it's okay. The whole thing just feels creepy and weird, and I don't like it.
Right. I have more of an issue with them taking away the season tickets than I do with them charging more for individual games. Because there's a certain point when you sit here and say, hey, I think they did say it, but if they say we're going to charge more for Eagles and Philly or Steelers tickets because their fans are going to be the ones who come and buy them, I have a problem with that. If they say we're going to charge more for these tickets because more people are going to come to those games, that's supply and demand, right?
But it's the same thing, Brent.
Yeah.
The reason that they're going to be in higher demand and a harder ticket to get, yes, you can set your price at anything you want, is because if the Bucs are sold out, it'd be a non-issue.
Right.
But we're not. And
right.
When does the stadium fill up? When teams with big nationwide fan bases come down to Ray J.
Right.
It's the same thing saying, and I don't care what they charge for individual tickets. I really don't. But don't do that and then point at a Bucs fan who has paid you for season tickets, say you can't do this, and then do it with the other hand. It's
right.
just it's not right.
So I'm a Kentucky fan, also in the college ranks, and I know several Kentucky people who have season tickets, not just to Kentucky basketball and Rupp Arena in Lexington, Kentucky, but they also have season tickets to South Carolina, to Tennessee, to Georgia, to North Carolina. They purchase all of these season tickets to multiple colleges that they don't even live in the area so that they can go to that one game that will be played every single year, and then they sell the rest of the tickets.
Oh, see?
And trying to get a ticket to a Kentucky away game is oftentimes more expensive than it is trying to get a ticket to a Kentucky home game when you live in Lexington.
Wait, what?
Yes. It's trying to like when I lived in South Carolina and I tried to get tickets to the Kentucky-South Carolina game that they'd play once a year. Those tickets were often more expensive than it was when I was living in Lexington just trying to get a ticket to go to Rupp to watch a UK game at home.
Oh, because Kentucky's fan base is so wide, and so one chance for everybody to get to go see them in that area.
Exactly, and they travel, and and you watch Kentucky's fan base. Wherever Kentucky's playing, there's a huge swath of blue throughout the entire stadium. I say that just to say, the same thing that works in college, it's also working in the NFL. I would have no problem believing that there are some people who, Florida's just full of transient people, right? People who've moved here from other places. That there are people who've bought season tickets to the Bucs so that they can go to that 1 or 2 games a year, and then they're going to sell the rest of them. They don't care. Or they get season tickets so that when their team comes down once every 3 years or 4 years or however often the rotation is, they're guaranteed that ticket, but then they just get rid of them for the rest of the years. I don't have a problem with that. I really don't.
Either.
Yes, if it was sold out and these guys were doing that, then you might be like, hey, listen, it doesn't really seem like you're using your tickets. But Ren,
that's okay. Here, buy them from me.
Yeah,
you
right.
Can't. It's like, it's sort of like crapping on capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like it's almost I don't want to say I'm missing the right word, but it's not quite a monopoly, but it's it's a little bit of a bullying tactic. It's like, hey, you can't do with the product that I sell you, you can't do what you want with it. You have to do what I tell you to do with it. Me, I can do whatever I want because it's my product. But it's, imagine how is that logical in any other sale? Like here, buy my house. Oh, but I'm going to landscape the yard the way I want it. Like, I don't here's some soap. Oh, you can only use it when you're taking a bath.
So Frank Lloyd Wright, famous architect from back around the turn of the century, the 1900s in that area.
My favorite.
Yeah. So when he would design a building or a house, he would often also design the furniture that would go in it and where the furniture would go. And I've heard stories of him walking past a window of a house that he designed. The owners would have moved furniture around and he would knock on the door and be like, no, the couch goes here. This goes over here. So listen, at the end of the day, and look, I'm going to go back to kind of what you have said repeatedly, Ren. Listen, this is the Bucs product. They can do with it however they want to do with it. I don't necessarily like it. I don't like the idea that they're taking away season tickets from some people or not reselling them, because it makes me question what my own sales guy told me. But that being said, here's the deal. I'd rather have more Bucs fans in the stadium, and if you're going to pay me stupid amount of money, I'll stay home and watch the Bucs. I don't care what jersey you're wearing, but it's going to be stupid. And if that makes me lose my season tickets, well, then I'll deal with it then. But other than that, the actual idea of ticket prices going up for certain seats in certain sections, I just don't have a problem with it.
I don't either.
So, all right. Well, moving on from that fun topic, let's move on to which one? Let's move on to this one real quick, and then we'll go on to kind of, I guess, the big one to talk about. This is more of just a fun topic. On Buccaneers.com, a couple of the writers got together and made some bold predictions for the 2018 season. Scott Smith
just came out today.
Did it come out today?
I think so.
Scott Smith, Casey Phillips, and Carmen. I put Vitale here, but that's not correct.
That's how it's spelled.
Is it? Did I write it down right?
I don't know if that's how it's pronounced. I don't know. She's new.
Yeah,
to
Vitale.
The sort of,
Carmen Vitale.
She's new to sort of the writing. I think the other guy was like John Kitna. I want to say it was. I think he moved on.
Gotcha.
But, moved up the ladder, possibly with another organization, and so she's. I've noticed that this off season, she's been. When they have these roundtable things, she's been the one who's been weighing in.
Yeah, I've noticed the name a lot more. Scott Smith, he's the senior writer and editor of Buccaneers.com. It makes me wonder how many writers they actually have.
I'm senior writer
of 2.
Executive producer. I also am going to be your valet, your cook, your waiter.
And I'm the webmaster. All right, but anyway, so let's just run through these real quick because I thought they were interesting. It's not really news. I just thought it was interesting. Scott Smith, his bold prediction says that Jameis will be in the top 5 passer rating in 2018.
Now, I haven't read the sort of the article itself. If you know Scott, he's done. If you've ever read any of his stuff or even hear him talk on Buccaneers Live, the sponsored by Miller Lite, for him to have that bold prediction, he's going to do the research. And Brent, we were sort of talking about before the show, like Scott writes looks
500
like 300
words.
Yeah, 300, 500 words on why this is going to happen. and then Casey and now I forgot her first name. All I wanted was call her Vitale. What's it? Carmen?
Yeah.
Carmen. And Casey and Carmen write like 2 paragraphs. So I'm going to go back and read it probably tonight. Mm-hmm. I bet he has a very good argument to back this up.
Oh, he does. I'm not going to read it. You guys need to go read it, Buccaneers.com. But yeah, no, it's a very detailed, very researched. He actually makes a reasonable. It's not really that bold once you read what he says. The biggest thing he says is, overall, I am predicting another leap for Winston, which will catapult him into the top 5. If he makes a leap similar basically to what other players have done and what he is on track to do, he will be a top 5 person.
Is it what in QBR?
Passer rating, yeah. It's specifically in passer rating. So
is that QBR, quarterback rating?
Yeah, I don't quite know how all that works.
Yeah, I know they had like one and everyone stuck to it, and they came out with another one. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, right. Yeah, I hope so. That's what I have to say about that.
Casey Phillips. Actually, I think this is why I wanted to do this whole thing, is just because of Casey's thing. Casey's bold prediction is that we will not just have 1, but 2 double-digit sack guys in the 2018 season. Now, keep in mind, this is after, and we'll talk about this in just a moment, after the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have actually fired their defensive line coach, and we don't know who that next defensive line coach will be as we record this show. She makes that comment, and our entire defensive line very well could be getting shaken up, with the exception of just a couple of guys. It looks like we could have a whole new defensive line, but she's saying 2 double-digit sack guys for the Buccaneers in 2018.
You know what that sound is?
Hopefully it's not your mic crapping out. No.
Did you hear anything at all?
Is she drinking?
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's Casey drinking the Kool-Aid, but the problem is like it's still like in the package. Like it hasn't been made yet.
It's just powder.
It's just like it's right there you go, right out of the pouch. Just the pixie stick on steroids right there. I would love to agree with her, but I mean I'm of the thinking, as sort of you alluded to, that the Buccaneers' defensive line is going to look nothing like it does right now.
Right.
Everyone.
And maybe that's why.
but yeah, okay. But you don't know who they're going to bring in. Obviously, you think they're going to be upgrades. But we thought Chris Baker was going to be an upgrade.
We thought Noah Spence was going to play all year long.
Yeah.
We thought Robert Ayers was going to beast out this year.
Yeah. So like, if you look at it as the line sits right now, you can only think like, well, I guess McCoy gets his 10, and I guess she's counting that Noah Spence comes back, doesn't blow out his shoulder for the 3rd year in a row.
She listed it, just so you know, she listed it as Gerald McCoy and Player X.
Player, there you go. Okay, Gerald McCoy, who is entering his ninth season and has never gotten 10 sacks. We'll see. Like you said, there's going to be a new defensive line coach. Robert Ayers might be gone as a salary cap casualty. Chris Baker's probably gone, even though I'm not 100% sold on that. I think the Buccaneers are going to get probably 2 to probably 4 defensive linemen / I'm talking about like tackles, nose guards, ends in free agency. Like bring those guys in and probably draft another 2 in the draft. Like it's the only people that might be left over is going to be like Spence, McCoy, and
Stevie
Golston.
T.
Yeah, Stevie T, but he still might, he could still make the roster but never dress. But you know what I mean? I'm talking like guys that played last year. Stevie T didn't play. It could be just, and neither really did Spence, but it could be those 3. Like Clint McDonald's a free agent. Love to have him, but there's no guarantees coming back.
Right.
So yeah,
Will Clark's, kind of
Ryan Russell.
Yeah, Ryan Russell, Silver Slinga. All those guys. And hey, listen, if you want to catch our takes, several of those guys are free agents this year. It is out right now, our Love Them or Leave Them episode, where we go through all of the Buccaneers 2018 free agents and talk about who we'd like to keep around and who we want to see walk.
And I would like to tell everyone, when you listen to the episode, remember, we're talking about the 90-man roster.
Exactly.
Not the 53.
Which changes that whole conversation, Ren.
It does.
Changes the whole conversation.
It really does.
So, okay. All right. So in talking about this, listen, here's what I'd say to Casey. Casey, pump your brakes. I have made the same prediction for the last 2 years and got wildly beat by it. Don't. I'm waving you off. Don't go there, Casey. Don't go there. All right. You mentioned a couple of names here. You said Chris Baker. You said you're not quite sold on the idea that Baker is necessarily gone. It seems to be a foregone conclusion with just about anybody that you hear talking about it, Ren. You are literally the first person I've heard say that. And here's the crazy thing. I've kind of been thinking it too, especially with this whole D-line coach shakeup.
Yeah.
And especially when you really consider the fact and the idea that we didn't use Baker properly. Like, we didn't use him for
what we thought we brought him in for.
Exactly. The other thing, and the other person I want to mention is Robert Ayers. Robert Ayers is another guy who is quite often, though not as often as Baker, but still quite often mentioned as a guy who probably will not be here in 2018. A lot of people seem to be saying that. I'm not saying it. I'm just saying a lot of people. And by that, I mean the Bucs media guys, all those guys with podcasts, which is kind of like all of them. Twitter, yeah, just a lot of people saying that Ayers isn't going to be here. However, there was an article that came out, and I don't have it pulled up to know exactly what it said, but it said that Robert Ayers was the most effective person on our team last year at getting pressures on the quarterback. And I seem to remember, and I might be wrong, but I seem to remember it wasn't just necessarily like on the Buccaneers team. Like, it was actually a pretty decent stat, like, for his position around the league.
Like top 5 or something.
Yeah, like, you go, really? Oh, well, Robert Ayers had more of an impact didn't get the sacks. We could never get the sack, but he had the pressures on the QB, which is also important. So, I am less sold on Robert Ayers necessarily being an automatic person who's walking out. And I'm not 100% sold that Baker's actually going to go, especially given the new guy. But why don't you talk about that for just a moment? Dive into that a little bit.
Well, I don't think, I said a few podcasts ago, I don't remember, it might just be out now. I think we recorded that free agency, love him or leave him, so long ago. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where I sort of put up the biggest argument, was I'm not sure Chris Baker's going to go. One, I'll start here. He was the best defensive lineman the Washington Redskins had 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Had like 8 sacks. You put up before he came to the Bucs, he put up his 2017, 2016 season up against like Don Terry Poe, who everybody knows. And Baker's stats, as far as the things you're looking for, sacks, pressures, fumbles, fumble recoveries, all that kind of stuff, blew Don Terry Poe out of the water. Then we bring him here, and we ask him to do none of those things.
Or put him in on the plays where those would be things that he could do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, he's a goof, and someone sort of, needs to slap him upside the head and, sort of point him in the direction like, hey, this is how we do things here. But the talent is there. Now, maybe this new defensive line coach does that right away, has a meeting with Chris Baker and brings him in. It's like, okay, man, like, look, like, you need to do this, 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 and this. I'm putting my neck out to bring you back this training camp. But, if you fall out of line this much, I'm going to suggest that you get cut. And then, the leadership has to come from the veterans, has to come from the Gerald McCoy. It has to come from Quan, has to come from Levante.
Mm-hmm.
Noah Spence can even step in there. Will Golson, like, these guys all need to sort of show, incoming free agents and rookies, the guys that are sort of walking on their own path, like, hey, come back into the fold. Like, this is way you need to be a little more serious during these times of the day. I know it's really, it seems very vague what I'm saying, but it's like one of those things that if person A gets away with something and they know that it's not right, and the person who's supposed to stop it knows it's not right, but they sort of let them do it anyway, it starts to build this culture of having things done that way. So then person B sees person A do that and go, oh, okay, well, I can do that too. Now the person that's supposed to stop it now person A and B are both doing it, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, so it's become a thing. Well, fast forward, weeks, months, a year, maybe, however you want to do it. Now you've got like person A, B, C, D, E, F doing it, and the person who's supposed to stop it didn't, and now someone even higher up has to come down. The person supposed to stop it gets fired, and everyone, and A, B, C, D, and F all start to get disciplined. Some of them get fired, some of them, so it's. I'm way off track here, but what I'm trying to say is that I know I went way off track there. I had another point, but I didn't want to bring it up. It's not a foregone conclusion to me that Chris Baker is gone, especially since Jay Hayes has been fired and they picked the new defensive line coach and he gets into the mix. The talent is there. His attitude and effort, if it's not on Sunday, seem to be lacking, to say the least. Mm-hmm. But that's not necessarily a death nail for him.
Look, so here's my thing on Baker. When he came in, we all heard.
Are you going to tell a story when you met him? You haven't told that story yet.
I haven't told that story. Let's tell that story. I'll tell it here in just a little bit. When Baker came in, we all heard straight from the get-go, he's a good player, doesn't like to practice.
Right.
And truth be told, most every single one of us was good with it. Because truthfully, as long as he plays and long as he performs when he's on the field, I don't care. Right?
Right.
And we saw in Hard Knocks, he's out there, fondling a tree and all this kind of stuff. And we all kind of he'd about it. And then, they busted some jokes on him during the rookie symposium thing, I guess, or whatever it was, rookie night during Hard Knocks. They, and everybody, kind of blew up and laughed about it. And it was this joke that Chris Baker doesn't like to practice. And it certainly was something that we saw with our own eyes. Season goes on. As we said, they really didn't use Baker well. And Baker wasn't performing. But,
right.
Was it because he doesn't have the talent, because he's not practicing? Is it because he's a bad locker room guy? He's a bad coach? Like, what's the deal with Baker? The idea that, especially now with a new defensive line coach coming in, who might actually want to use Baker. If I'm Cutter and Light, I'm going to hang on to Baker, get the new defensive line guy, and then we're going to talk about it.
Right.
So, and that person may be like, no, listen, I've got Baker. I'll be able to control him. But the thing about Baker that I think everybody is, they've given him the ticket out of town, is that blow up that they had in the locker room that just happened to get caught on radio. Right. When the recorder's on. Because the other side that we hear to that is, listen, those kinds of conversations, that kind of stuff happens all the time in locker rooms. It's just the cameras aren't on, or the microphones aren't on when that happens. So like we got a glimpse into what that looked like when Quan and Jameis and whomever else went over and started, blowing him up. And listen, I'm not defending Baker's performance in the 2017 season. I'm not saying that he performed better than he did, because he didn't. I'm just saying I don't necessarily think that it was all necessarily his fault, or it might be. I'm just not sure that it was. And I'm with you, Ren. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he is gone. And I'm just going to say, you heard it here on the Pewtercast first. If Chris Baker is on the team next year, don't be surprised. Don't be shocked.
Be surprised and be shocked. But you can be surprised and shocked all you want. But don't think it.
Can we talk about it all season long and say we told you so? Sorry.
Don't even.
Sorry.
Get me started on that.
Sorry.
Buffoon.
No, it's all right. It's all right. Let's. We're not trying to make enemies at all. You mentioned me meeting Chris Baker. I did. I got to meet Chris Baker a couple weeks ago. It was after the season was done. I was at Disney World actually with my son. Actually, I think it was my son. I think it was.
Who the hell was I there?
Was it? Well, because sometimes I go with one of my kids. Sometimes I go with my daughter. Sometimes I go with the whole family. We switch it up. We've got the season passes, annual passes, whatever. So, but I was there with my kid, and we went to ride the train. And we're sitting there waiting on the train to come in, and I've got a Buccaneers shirt on, as I almost always do. And the train comes in, and it pulls in, and it stops, and I look up, and I see this guy sitting on the train, and I'm like, that looks like hell yeah. And he looks up and he sees me and he sees my shirt, and he's like, he just kind of gives me like the knowing nod of like, partly it was the, oh crap, there's a fan. But
hey, acknowledgement. Hey, you're a Bucs fan. Oh, I hope he doesn't recognize it.
But at the same time, I was like, swaggy, and he's like, hey, what's up, man? It's, you cool. And there was my kid, and I said, hey, listen, I don't want to, he's here with his family. It's him and his wife and his little girl. Beautiful little girl, by the way. I
see her on Instagram.
Yeah, beautiful little girl. I literally was intentionally trying to find a different seat, but the only seat that was available was the bench right in front of him and his family, because I have been around celebrities, quote unquote, enough to, I just try to let them be. I really do. So we wound up sitting there, and I'm sitting there. You can hate a player all you want. He's still a player on my favorite team. Right. And I'm like, there's Chris Baker behind me. And, I was talking, and Jude, my kid, he had his Buccaneer shirt on too. And so we're sitting there, and Jude turns around and goes, are you with the Bucs? And he's like, yeah, I play with the Bucs. And so we kind of got to talking. It was his little girl's birthday, and, got to wish her happy birthday. And we just had a little conversation. He was FaceTiming with his parents for his little girl to talk to and stuff. And, I didn't talk about the season. I wasn't like, hey, what's up with you jumping off sides there in that one game?
So let's talk about that Carolina game.
Yeah. So what really happened in the locker room that one day? Like, is it true you don't like to? No, I'm not. Have you seen any trees lately? Is your wife jealous? Like, it wasn't anything like that. It was mostly just talking about his daughter. And because I know if I'm that person, like, just treat me like I'm a human being, and I was sitting there and kind of had my phone out, and before we left, he's like, hey, you want to get a picture real quick? And I was like, yeah, I sure do. And so, he was the one who offered it outside of me. So here's the deal. Chris Baker, cool guy. I mean, just a cool guy. He's a really nice guy. He's not a jerk at all. And he went on his way with his family, and my kid and I went on our way, and so it was cool. It was a cool little meeting with Chris there. So anyway, that's that story.
Would it be fair to call him the Donovan Smith of the defensive line? I'm going to take that as a no.
I don't know any of the other guys. Sure. I don't know. I don't care. So, but
that's a no.
All of that, I would say, sure, go if you want to be surprised, if you want to be shocked that Baker's back, fine. Just remember that we said here on the show that it could happen.
Not so fast. It's my lead course, though.
There you go. I know. All right. Well, listen. Back to these bold predictions. One more, Carmen. Casey's was 2 double-digit sack guys. Took a big rabbit trail on that. Let's come back. Carmen's. This is kind of, I think, a real short one. The Bucs will have 2 Pro Bowl linebackers in Levante and Quan next year in 2018. Could happen. It probably, of the 3, seems to be the one that is the most likely, although Levante's got that weird positional thing going against him. But Levante was a Pro Bowler not this past year, but 2 years ago. And Quan was in as an alternate this past year, so it's not outside the realm of possibility that we could see that.
It's not, but like you said, it's so hard for an outside linebacker in a 4-3 defense to make the Pro Bowl because they don't get as many sacks as outside linebackers in a 3-4 defense. Mm-hmm. And, sacks move the needle and get votes from players and from fans. So, as a Bucs fan, it's like, hey, that's, that could happen. But they're just, the chips are just so stacked against the Bucs. I mean, he had a great year. You know what? If the Bucs make the playoffs, I think that's the deciding factor. If the Bucs make the playoffs, I think they could have done it this year. Like the year that Levante had, and then Quan filling in being an alternate, it could have happened this year. But since we were so bad and the defense, let's face it, was so bad, that there was no chance for them to get in. But if they go to the playoffs, I could really get behind that. Like I could if you can guarantee 10 wins for me, I could throw some money down on that bet like right now.
Mm-hmm. I like I said, I think of the three, this is probably the one that has the most likelihood of happening. I will put the caveat, not so much of if they make the playoffs, though I think that certainly has a lot to do with it, but also if the linebacker core continues to shine next year like it did this past year, then I certainly think we could definitely see that. I think they're both certainly deserving of that. Now, you mentioned working in a 4-3 defense, but Ren, there's been some shakeups on the defense this year, and it's possible, and we'll get to this in just a minute and explain why, but it's possible the Bucs may be moving more to a 3-4 defense, which could help out Levante David. But in talking about that, let's move on. And, of course, I think the biggest news, and we'll close out the show with this topic here, a couple days ago, news came out that Jay Hayes got fired. I believe Peter Port was the one who broke that at like 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that.
I'm so upset I missed that. I missed it like by 15 minutes. I was like, wow, so mad. Like normally at that time of night, the phone is glued to my hand. Like, I'm catching up on everything during the day. I'm sort of also catching up on my my phone games that I play. The ones you got to check in every day. Okay, make sure I do all this stuff and then back out of it. But for some reason, I put it down and I started watching Bob's Burger with Cheryl, which is hilarious, by the way. If you don't watch Bob's Burger,
never seen it.
Oh man, you should binge that.
Okay,
it is.
Is that a
hilarious.
Netflix show or something? Or
I don't know.
You don't know.
Well, we've talked a few times that I have a jailbroke stick.
Right.
So like I can sort of watch whatever I want when I want to watch. So it's like having Netflix basically for everything.
Right.
But so I mean, she's really into it. But if you start from the beginning and just sort of watch 2 or 3 episodes at a time, the jokes come like lightning quick, like one after another. Like everything somebody says is a joke, and it's just anyway. Check it out if you like that kind of style of comedy. But so I put my phone down. Talk about a rabbit hole. I put my phone down and I just missed that announcement. I picked up my phone like about 1:15. I think the news broke, like you said, around 12:30. I was like, because we have been sort of talking about we would like to see Jay Hayes. Nothing against him personally. Sorry, you don't have a job, but have be the first person on the train out of town from Buccaneer fandom or Buccaneerville. Sure. Yeah. Anyway, I interrupted you. You were saying something.
No, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, Jay Hayes, he is, so he gets fired. I think there's a couple of questions to kind of go around this. The first one is what took so long? Why so late? Of course, the other side of that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, according to Rick Stroud, had already picked up all of the assistant coaches' options for the next year, which would seem to mean that they've already committed to pay Jay Hayes for the 2018 season, and now they're letting him go.
Right.
That seems to be weird. I don't know if that's actually how that's going to play out. Honestly,
I would like to say something real quick about that.
Sure.
No other outlet has been able to verify that, by the way. Now Rick Stroud is not in the business of throwing stuff against the wall just to see if it sticks. Like, he works for a legit, big-time, actually credited and has a great reputation newspaper. It is. We have a couple of Pulitzer Prize winners, and they're always like in the top 10. Like, the Times is a solid newspaper.
You mean Rick Stroud doesn't do stuff like say, oh, this person is going to be the Buccaneers' next draft pick, unless that person actually is their next draft pick?
That is correct. That is correct. He's not going to do columns about they need to take this person or else, or there's no conjecture. And
if you guys would like more information on that last line, go back and listen to our draft show right around the O.J. Howard.
I was wondering if that you were doing. Yeah, so we did a real quick. I don't even remember what we're talking about. Real quick, we did a live draft show where we did it on Mixler Live, and we started from the first pick, and we talked, and the Bucs were coming up, and I told Brett, don't ruin it for me, because if you follow the right people on Twitter, you could sort of find out who the picks was a good 2-3 minutes before they actually popped up on the TV. Broadcasted on TV. It's not like it was a delay or anything. It was just people found out before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told Brent, like, don't ruin it for me. And Brent decided to read a tweet from Rick Stroud, the guy who just makes stuff up all the time.
Yeah. To be fair, what I thought he was saying,
he announced it. He's like,
to be fair, what I thought he was doing was the other team at 17 or 18 didn't take this guy, so he's obviously going to go to the Bucs. Like I thought he was speaking in hyperbole or whatever, but he wasn't, because it's Rick Stroud who doesn't speak in hyperbole, as I've come to learn. So my apologies once again. That's what that last line was about. Ren, go ahead. Rick Stroud reports this. Nobody else has been able to verify it. However, Rick Stroud is not in the business. It does not typically say stuff without it actually being true.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So without these other guys being able not to back it up, I would still, put my eggs in the basket of this is actually really what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Which is that the Buccaneers have extended the contracts of all their assistants, and then ended up firing. So basically, that means NFL, if you don't know, coaches' salaries are guaranteed. So once they're extended, that's it. So Jay Hayes will be being paid by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this upcoming season.
Yeah, and here's the thing: I don't care.
I don't either.
I don't care. I mean, there are other people out there with podcasts and stuff who've been making a big deal of that. I just don't care. Listen, if they came to the decision that Hayes was not going to be a good fit, and they came to it now versus 6 weeks ago, then fine. You have more of a point to me of saying, well, the coaching carousel has gone on, so now people aren't available, various things.
Right.
But, this is one aspect, and then we're going to talk about the people who have been interviewed a little bit. But, Ren, I had a theory as to why it happened so late.
Well,
and that theory, I think, is completely blown up. But go ahead.
Now, I just want to say, just think of the opposite of that. The people that are sort of like banging the Bucs, like, oh, you paid him and now you let him go. You're so stupid. Imagine if the Bucs went through this. Okay, we're picking up your contract. Oh, we want to get rid of you, but we paid you, so we're just going to keep you for another year. That got out.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, you don't care. You know why we don't care? Because it's not our money.
Yeah.
It's not. It's like, okay, they tied up all their coaches. They had all their coaches set. And when they said, we're going to tweak some things, this is what they meant. Yeah. And this is what we thought they all meant.
Right.
Like Jay Hayes is probably going to go. We were talking about George Warhop, the offensive line coach, the special teams coach. Like, those are guys who are like, Bucs need to take a serious look. And now that it happens, it's, they're already paying. What a bunch of idiots. And it's like, okay, man, whatever. Can't win.
Yeah.
But what's your theory?
My theory was, my theory, because this was a theory that I had as to up to the point where they fired him, why they hadn't fired anybody yet.
Okay, I think it's going to be pretty close to my thinking.
Yeah, I think I said this on one of our earlier shows, was they weren't going to fire somebody unless they knew who they wanted to go get. They weren't just going to fire him and go, oh, okay, now let's just go see who's out there. This guy's fired, so let's go see who's out there. And what they were waiting on was to see who might become available. Which, we had some people in from the Patriots, the Eagles, certainly the two Super Bowl teams. Those guys aren't even available until the end of the season. You had some other people that were locked up. Now, that was my theory as to why they had waited, and the only reason why I could see that they would have fired Jay Hayes so late was because suddenly somebody that they wanted is now available. However, of the people that they have interviewed, they were all available pretty close to the end of the season.
Yeah.
So it would seem that theory is not holding water unless there's somebody else that they're still interviewing, because as we record this, they have not made an offer, at least that has been reported to anyone, to the people that they've interviewed yet.
Right. And there's 3, and we're going to talk about those people in a minute. But yeah, that's what I was thinking too. That was pretty close to my thinking. And something interesting, and all we know is there's 3. Like the Bucs might have been interviewing people even before they even fired Jay Hayes. Like we don't know.
Possible. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they.
I doubt it. I feel like that kind of information would be out by now, the way things kind of leak, but it is possible.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm not so much on the train of that information will be out by now. But okay. Yeah, that's a dumb point to debate, to be honest. Who cares? But with something that Scott Smith brought up, and he brought it up on, sort of his pod/YouTube channel thing, I'm a Duker he does with the Buccaneers. Uh-huh. And I believe he also brought it up on Locked On Bucs podcast with James and David, mm-hmm. is that don't be surprised if Bucs, look in the college ranks as well.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting and fun to watch to see who it gets. But of the guys that they have interviewed, there are some things that are starting to develop a pattern, mm-hmm. which makes things really interesting when we're talking about the defensive line and the linebacker group going into next season.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and talk about those guys, because it's actually going to wrap back into a theory that Scott Smith put out there as far as why it actually might have been so late. So let's put a pin in that, and let's go ahead and talk about the people that they have interviewed. Well, the first person that we know that the Buccaneers interviewed for that defensive line spot is their current assistant defensive line coach, Paul Spicer. Now, he's been around the Bucs for the past couple of years under Jay Hayes. This would be the presumably not a whole lot would change, you would think, right? This would be more like a promotion, just kind of keeping the same system. What do you know about Paul Spicer?
Well, not much.
Yeah.
He's gone for like 5 years, gone from like a high school defensive line coach to now being the assistant defensive line coach with the Buccaneers. The one thing I do like about it is that that the information has gotten out that will show other assistants that if a job opens up with the organization, at least under this regime, mm-hmm. that you got a shot to, you got to take your shot. I don't think Paul Spicer is going to get the job.
Right.
A lot of people are saying, well, how good can he be? Like, look how bad the defensive line was. Actually got the guy fired.
Yeah.
But, it's not his job to, as the defensive line assistant coach, it's not his job to implement what he thinks the defensive line should be doing. He needs to implement what Jay Hayes is telling him to do. Like, it's Jay Hayes' philosophy. It's your job to make sure the guys are in the right spots and they understand what's going on.
But you also can go the other direction with that, right? Of Mike Smith. Mike Smith is the defensive coordinator. He's kind of the guy in charge of all that anyway. So is much going to change anyway with, Mike Smith still being around. So,
right.
Yeah, it comes at him from both ways, right?
But what I understand, from what I think I've gotten, and no one's really made a big deal about this, but I think I've seen it one or two times, is that Jay Hayes is the guy who's in charge of rotation, and he was also in charge of the defensive line calls.
Okay, now listen, I want to talk about that, because this bugs the ever-loving snot out of me when I hear stuff about this.
Okay.
And this is going to go back to Coach Cutter, and this is going back to Coach Smith. Jay Hayes makes those calls, fine. Jay Hayes is in charge of that rotation, fine. For 16 games, this defensive line was not doing well. At some point, Mike Smith, as a defensive coordinator, has to look at Jay Hayes, and I'm going to pull that line from Remember the Titans, where he says, you either fix it or I'm taking over. And at some point, it's on Dirk Cutter's shoulders to look at Mike Smith and say, you either fix it or I'm taking over. Like, at some point, those guys have to step in. Like, Jay Hayes, if Jay Hayes was sucking that bad or whatever, they still needed to step in and do something. But you're right, because I hear the exact same thing. And it bugs me when I hear that, because at some point, those guys should have stepped in, or at least you think they would. And why wouldn't they have? I don't understand. Do you wait till 6 weeks after the season to fire him, and that's when you're
I hear what you're saying, and it's a valid point, but there's another way to look at this. One, Sean McVay, the coach of the Rams, the LA Rams now, everyone's talking about, well, look at them, they caught lightning in a bottle. But I've heard a couple of interviews with Sean McVay, and his number one thing is hire the people and then let them do their job. John McVay doesn't stick his nose into anyone else like the defense. When the defense on the field, he's sitting down on the bench like he's going over pictures and like he's being the offensive coordinator, and Jay Hayes had 11, 12 years experience in the NFL. So, and he was highly regarded. So, and we don't know if those conversations didn't happen. I'm sure, a lot of listeners out there, including myself, has you've done something that your bosses don't like or they question, and they bring you in or walk over to you and have a conversation, and you tell your side of the story. They go, okay. And that could have happened. I also think that the Bucs did change it up. I think all the stunts they were doing at the first part of the season that weren't working, everyone was complaining about, I don't think you saw them nearly as much during the second half of the season.
Fair enough.
Now, it didn't work.
Right.
The results really – it worked a little bit because if you have to remember how bad – it seemed like we were in game 4 or 5 and the Bucs had 2 sacks. Like there was no pressure whatsoever. Now, there was a game here and there where, they came with no sacks too, but – by and large, you can sort of equate not as many stunts to getting more sacks. It just didn't produce enough where it really made a difference in the final number. So that would be the other side of the coin for me, is saying well, why did you step in? Well, you don't know if they didn't. It just still didn't work out.
Fair enough. But to the point. To your point, Jay Hayes was the guy who was making these calls. Paul Spicer, would he be the guy naturally then would step up? Would he make similar calls to the way Jay Hayes was making those calls?
You'd have to. I'm sure that's what they talked about in the interview.
Yeah.
What's your defensive line philosophy?
Right.
And
what would you have done different than your boss? Because have you ever had a boss where you sat there and said, wow, if I was in your job, I'd have done this differently?
About 95%.
Every time? Yeah. Fair enough. All right. So Paul Spicer, another name, and this kind of, I think, was the major name that was tossed around that was expected anyway, was Todd. I'm not gonna say this guy's name right. Monachino. Ted Monachino. He was the defensive line coach in Indianapolis under Chuck Pagano, I believe. There's a lot about there's connections with him and Cutter and whatever. But of course, the knock against them is Indianapolis, their defensive line finished one notch above the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So that's, while technically I guess that would be an upgrade, it's not quite the upgrade we're looking for,
Right. And then you have to take a deep dive into see who, the Colts had as their defensive line. And obviously it wasn't that good because in all the mocks you see, it's like Bradley Chubb or bust for them at 3 because what's their biggest need? Defensive line help. And you make the argument if you don't have the horse, you can't run the race. But, it is a little bit of nepotism, which seems to run rampant in the NFL, which I guess I really don't have a problem with. It makes sense. You know the guy, you've coached with him, you know what you're going to get.
Right.
But he was also the linebacker coach of the Ravens, if I'm not mistaken. They've got a pretty good linebacking core. And he was, the defensive line coach of the Jaguars. And, I believe back when
he was defense with Smith and Cutter when they were both
here. That's where the nepotism comes in. They all sort of crossed over in that Jacksonville Jaguars head coach by Jack Del Rio days. So it was a name that came out by some of the beat writers. I think Stroud talked about it. Greg Allman talked about it. Some others probably brought it up as well.
I think the Pure Report guys had a big piece on it as well.
Yeah, so it was a name that came out pretty early. We'll see.
Okay, now this was the one though, Ren, that to me just kind of punched a hole in my personal theory, because this guy's been available since Chuck Pagano got fired, right?
Right.
So it's not like he suddenly became available. So now is the time to go get him. If indeed he was the guy who was being targeted.
Yeah, plus, but you don't know how many people said no.
It's true.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
maybe their first choice, they were waiting for somebody on Philly's staff or the Vikings staff or the Patriots staff, and they wanted to talk to that person first. Like, we want to give you first refusal. It's like, hey, Tim, whatever his name, Monticello, cheese guy, Munster, what's his name? Ted
Monachino.
Ted Monticello.
Yeah.
Hey, come on and interview the job. Okay, you did great, but there's some other people that I would rather have the job than you, but I can't talk to them right now. So, like you said, it's the story as far as hiring the defensive line coach and the timing and all that might be much more about what we don't know than what we do know.
It's very true. There is one other person that we know that has been reported to have interviewed for the job, and I believe that interview actually probably took place today, Ren. Might have taken place yesterday as we record this episode. Brenson Buckner. Well, I got to be honest, I wouldn't necessarily mind another Brent hanging around, but Brenson Buckner, who was a defensive line coach out of Arizona. Now, I was looking at this guy. His resume is pretty solid. This is the upgrade I think that we would be certainly looking for. His first season as an NFL defensive line coach in 2013, so he's been around for about 4 years. The Cardinals had 47 sacks that year. Calais Campbell was a guy that he worked with quite a bit. He's got a pretty good track record of developing defensive line guys. He's, this past year his team had 37 sacks, I believe it was. And he himself was a player. He was a defensive tackle, second rounder, went to Pittsburgh back in 1994. So, played with, he was in the league for 12 years. So,
he ended up with the Panthers. That's probably where most Buc fans know him.
Spent 5 years with the Panthers. Yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah, he certainly would have been in our division. So, this was a guy that they brought in. Now, okay, I'm going to make a connection here for you real quick, but before I do that, I want to give you a chance to talk about Buckner here at all, if you have anything for him.
Well, I think of the three that we know about, which we're talking about, he's the one that checks all the boxes, or at least the most.
Yeah.
The people that are in the Simeon Rice, Warren Sapp crowd, we need to get someone in here who's done it, who's been good at it. Well, check. He played in the NFL 12 years, defensive tackle. Like you mentioned, develop young players. There was in some of the write-ups, if you go look for it, they talk about how some of the ends and tackles he developed under St. Louis, and then of course, like you said, Calais Campbell was there, and his defensive line have put up some good sack numbers. So check there, development, high sack numbers, check. So of the three, he seems to be the most exciting one, at least, as far as outside looking in. Now, before I sort of push the conversation forward, I'm going to go ahead and let you make your connection.
Yeah, so now this is just a line pulled out of the bottom of an article at pewterreport.com. They're the guys that reported Buckner here. What they say is, and they kind of bring this together, they say that Monachino and Buckner both have coached in 3-4 defenses, which could be an indication that Tampa Bay wants to switch to a 3-4 defense in 2018, or at least implement it more in their scheme.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up.
Yeah.
Yeah. When Peter Report first did this, I believe it was in a Fab 5 that Scott Reynolds does, I thought it was sort of kind of like a throwaway part of it. It's like, hey, we got all the pieces to run a 3-4 defense because we're so strong at linebacker, be able to get all those guys in the field, and then we're weak in the defensive line. It might be a good idea to run a 3-4, and I'm like, well, Mike Smith doesn't really run a 3-4, never has run a 3-4. Now, we also hear the comments where if you play the linebacker over under on this spot or this side, it's it looks like a 4-3, but really it's a 3-4. Or if we're in a 4-3, but if I move one guy, then all of a sudden it's a 3-4 lineup. So,
but you also have the argument that more than a few times, especially towards the end of last year, we saw a 2-4-5 type of defense out there.
So he'll run anything. It seems like. So that, like I was going to say, that argument doesn't really hold water.
Right.
I sort of tweeted this out a couple of days ago. It's like, I wouldn't mind seeing Joe McCoy rush against the NFL's right tackles. You know,
sure.
I know he's great at 3 technique, but what's his best thing? His get off. Okay, so he's going to get the first step. You know, he's stronger than most people he's going up against. It's like I know he's a fabulous All-Pro, Pro Bowler 3 technique, but I think he could also. And I don't know anything about football, like as far as when it gets down to all the verbiage and what you look for and a defensive end versus doing tackle. I get that. Like I don't know, but it's just something that it'd be something I would like to see if that worked. It sort of makes sense, but then you never know. Like they just might kick him inside at the nose guard and be like, well, you're going to play nose guard instead if they go to this 3-4 defense. But like you said, this the Ted Monachino guy and Brenton Buckner, they have a strong base in the 3-4 defense, which makes it really interesting. The guys that seem to be the front runners seem like they cut their teeth on 3-4 defenses.
Yeah,
so.
And listen, Jason Light going in with Dirk Cutter, Mike Smith, and those guys, and they're doing their evaluations of 2017, and they're saying, what do we got to do for next year? And they're looking at their personnel. And maybe there's those conversations of saying, listen, we're not getting rid of players X, Y, and Z, and Q, L, M, N, O, P as well. Like, looking at what we have, looking at who they might actually be looking to bring in, and Mike Smith saying, well, hey, listen, we did try some of these different fronts throughout the end of last year, and they did seem to work a little bit better. Maybe we'll head down towards that, be looking at that kind of a deal. So that certainly could play. Now, you remember when I said, hey, Scott Smith had a theory as to why Jay Hayes got fired so late that I wanted to put a pin in? I want to go back to that now. Because this all wraps around with this conversation of the guys that we're bringing in for the 3-4 system potentially. Scott Smith on the Locked on Bucs podcast said that, hey, listen, Cutter and Hayes are good friends. And his feeling and kind of what was, things were just a little bit awkward in the room or in the building. And it was a really hard thing for Dirk Cutter to have to do. But what his sense was, or at least he said this might be kind of the way it went, was that Dirk Cutter and Jay Hayes sat down in the office and kind of together said, well, listen, Jay, if we let you go, maybe you can go land here, and maybe this can happen here, and maybe we'll get some stuff over here. And maybe it was more of a mutual thing. Like they hashed it out and kind of came to the thing of just saying, this, where we're going with the defense, this doesn't work for you anymore. And so what my kind of new theory is, and what I'm wondering if maybe happened, was the Bucs have, after doing their evaluations and looking at stuff and looking at their personnel and looking at who they might be drafting and who they might be bringing in a free agent, who they're letting go, who they're going to keep, have kind of maybe made this decision of they're going to move to a 3-4 or a 2-4-5 or something of that nature. Right? They're going to switch up out of this 4-3 system. And maybe Hayes said, I don't want to, or I'm not comfortable with that, or that's not the way that
that's not my strong suit.
That's not his strong suit. And so even though they already had his 2018 salary, let's assume that Stroud's right and they're going to pay his 2018 salary. You just say, listen, why don't I step away? Why don't I back away? And you guys can bring somebody in who actually can do this. That to me, and this is Cutter and a friend. Right now, I'm not saying Cutter just has to go in and say, hey, you sucked last year, you're gone. That's a horrible conversation to have with a friend, right? But it's one that sometimes needs to happen. But to me, I don't know, those pieces seem to fit in a much nicer little package if you put all of those pieces together. What do you think, Ren?
I like it. It's as good as any other theory I've heard. Because there really hasn't been any. Mm-hmm. There's really just been a lot of head scratching. Like, that is weird.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it's the why was it so late? I think to me is yeah. So
yeah,
and as you pointed out,
I like it. Makes sense. Connects all the dots.
It seems to connect all the dots. Now, as you pointed out, Scott Smith also said, don't sleep on the fact that the Bucs may look to the college ranks for the next defensive line coach as well. So, as far as we know, they have not offered a contract to any of these guys, Paul Spicer, Ted Monachino, or Brinson Buckner. So they may still be, interviewing. I don't know if coaching interviews go like a lot of times player visits go. Like you hear, a player is going to go visit these 3 teams, but he may go visit that one team and sign a contract right then. And so the other 2 teams, they don't even do the visits anymore. Or if they leave the building without a contract, that basically means they're not going to sign them. I don't know if coach interviews work that same way. Like if you come in for an interview and you leave without a contract, that means you didn't get the job.
Right. Yeah.
I just don't know. So maybe
I don't. Yeah. Who knows? I think it's worked both ways. There's been guys that don't leave the building, and I think there's also been guys that, okay, thank you very much. We still have more to interview, and then get a call later.
Well, with that, Ren, that's kind of all the news that we had there. So, any kind of final thoughts or anything maybe that I didn't bring up that you wanted to bring up about things that have happened here over the last couple of weeks?
I don't think so. I mean, off season's slow, man. It's slow. It's we're waiting for free agency.
I don't know. We had quite a bit to talk about tonight, though. So
yeah, but we waited 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's why we waited 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. So So I think we've covered it all. We could get into fluff stuff like, hey, Mike Evans is in Paris.
I think we did some fluff stuff like Donovan Smith's internship.
We did.
All right. Well, guys, that is going to wrap up this show then. With that, if you guys want to get in touch with us about anything that we have talked about tonight, we would love to hear your thoughts and your feedback. You can do that by finding us on Twitter at @ThePewterCast or at Facebook.com/ThePewterCast. Or if you want to actually send us some full-on thoughts, you can email us to thepewtercast@gmail.com. We would love to be able to receive those emails. We'll read them in a fan interaction segment that we might have coming up later. You can also leave us an iTunes review, as so many of you guys have done out there. Just go over to iTunes, rate us. We always prefer the 5-star kind. If you're so inclined, leave us a review. When those come in, we'll see them. We'll read them on the next episode of the Pewtercast. Well, Ren, as we get out of here, do you have any final thoughts, and where can the fine people out there find you on the internet?
Final thoughts. The Winter Olympics are terrible. I'm just not fun. I'm not a fan of figure skating. But I'm a fan of figure skating. I feel like I've been excluded. Just kidding. Even though I'm not really enjoying them. I'm watching the hell out of them, though. So I guess NBC doesn't care.
I hate this, but I can't change the channel.
There's nothing else on. I mean, if it's not Sunday or Monday and I can watch American Pickers all day on the History Channel, what else is there, really?
Curse of Oak Island on the History Channel.
I've tried to get into that.
8 seasons of, it's not over here either.
8 seasons of, hey, look, we found a piece of wood. Let's fly to France.
I'm addicted to this show, Ren.
It is terrible. It is worse than Lost. Lost, I quit watching Lost because they made me so mad that new questions will be answered, and they wouldn't. I'm like, they're just laughing at us. I'm not going to watch this anymore. Forget it. And it's the same thing with Oak Island. But anyway, you can find me on Twitter at Rendax, REN_DAXT. I'm always down to talk some Buccaneers football.
And if you guys want to get in touch with me, you can find me at Brent Allen Live across all the social medias. Or you can find me on my new podcast with Ren, where we'll be going over Lost and The Curse of Oak Island. No, that's not actually happening. But you can definitely hit us up here at the Pewtercast. Once again, that is at the Pewtercast across social medias and the pewtercast@gmail.com. Well, until next time, Bucs fans. Hey, listen, I think by the time we talk to you guys next, we've got the Combine coming up here soon. We also have free agency period, which is coming up. So the Offseason Tour is rolling on, and it's going to continue, so it's coming at you guys big. So until then, we'll end the show, as always, by saying, Go Bucs.
there a Star Trek podcast? We could do a Star Trek podcast.
We should definitely do a Star Trek podcast.